What's up, everybody, and welcome. And my name is St.Cabot, and welcome to my channel. But let's get right into it. So today we're going to address Alex Hormozi's topic of greatness. This is just a segment on what he was talking about on this podcast. But if you don't know who Alex Hormozi is, I advise you to Google him. He's one of the great minds of today's culture when it comes to business and acquisitions. But he talks about greatness in such a way that I believe that we as believers could use this as a tool to really understand what Jesus was actually talking about. You feel me? And I have scriptures to go along with this in the end, but I need you to follow me. All right, but let's go ahead and get into it real quick. So we're going to start right here. I advise you to go back and listen to the whole podcast. It was dope if you're into business, but I'm going to just do this small segment right here. Let's go.
That was a frame of reference that completely shifted the narrative for me in terms of competition. I still am pushing as hard as I possibly can to transform my potential into reality. But it feels different. It feels lighter, cool. And I like it. So anyways, I just want to share because it was a cool breakthrough that I had recently.
Yeah, you do look a little lighter.
Yeah.
Mentally, emotionally, physically. You lost a little weight too. It's funny, I just had Steve Young on, who's a Hall of Fame quarterback in the NFL, won multiple Super Bowls. He was just on a couple days ago, and he said, back in the late 80s, and I guess it was the 90s, Bill Walsh, the coach, who was he said 3 generations ahead of every other head coach at that time, he had a camera guy with him all the time, documenting his processes, and he would package it into these, I guess, VSH tapes, and put it in a box, and he would give it to all his assistant coaches and say, I want you to learn these skills. His offense was the West Coast offense, so it was far ahead of its time, where most people were just running the ball down, down the middle. And so he gave away everything for free.
Stop here for a minute. So you notice how he begins to talk about how this famous quarterback, as well as this coach, who was ahead of his time, and he begins to learn these tactics and methods as a coach, right? And he was winning games because of this. But he understood, hey, I'm going to record my process in this, and then I'm going to give these copies of this tape and send it out to multiple different coaches. And I want them to use this information and use it against me and challenge me and try to beat me. Right? That's very interesting. All right, let's keep it going.
Yeah. He said, I want you guys to learn this and then come and challenge me. Yeah. Use my information and come. And people, he said, years later, some coaches would leave to become head coaches, and they would compete in big games together. Sometimes we would lose against these other coaches that he coached. Yeah.
You notice that, right? He was considered one of the greatest coaches, and because he has given this playbook and these tactics, right, to these younger coaches to learn at an early age, right, they were able to eventually become head coaches and actually beat the one who gave them the playbook, right? But let's keep it going real quick. I don't want to get ahead. And
he loved it, and he is still revered as a leader in the space, because he was ahead of the time, because he documented it and gave away the skills to his other coaches. And I think that's really cool. I mean, you're not gonna be able to do this forever, so you might as well leave some legacy behind in that respect as well.
Yeah. That is the thing, right? He was actually happy that he was beginning to lose. The student was actually beginning to progress further than the actual teacher himself, right? And there's something to that, right? And again, I have scriptures to go with this, right? Let's keep it going.
Puts the game above the player.
Bing bong.
Let's hit it one more time.
Bing bong.
Bruh. It puts the game before the player. That is key. It puts the game before the player. Let's keep it going. And again, put a pin into that, because we're going to keep it going.
Yes.
Rather than putting the player above the game.
Yeah.
And so I think right now, if Elon had a choice of having somebody else accomplish all the things that he's setting out to accomplish and it not be him, my hope, my belief from everything that I have seen and witnessed of Elon is I think that he would be stoked. And because it's mission first rather than ego first. And so Steve Young put the game of football and it consistently being elevated to be played at a higher level as more important than him, because in 3 generations, no one will remember him.
Exactly.
That is key. And you notice what he said. Again, this gentleman right here that you see on my screen right now, that is Alex Hormozi. All right. And this is the thing. He said they put mission before ego. Our egos begin to bolster up, and we allow our ego to control us, and we forfeit so many things, right? And he said this, a couple centuries or generations later, they're not going to be remembered, right? So why not pass on that information, right? You're like, okay, all right, where's Dale going with this? But I'll show you. Hey, just stick with me.
Right? But the game will always have his fingerprint, right? And so like he can live on in that way.
Exactly.
And to the same degree in the business game, it's like we honor the game by playing to our absolute hardest and by doing our best and passing it on to the next generation. So anyways, I love that stuff. That stuff gets me amped.
That's it, right? But let's get into the scriptures real quick. All right, let's get into the scriptures real quick. But before I do, look, let's talk about this real quick. He talks about how when a person is going to be forgotten over the centuries, that doesn't mean that their methods, their lessons will be forgotten, right? So in a way, his signature or his thumbprint is going to be on and move on for centuries and centuries and centuries. All right. So this is as far as we can get when it comes to greatness and putting our name, because eventually, like Michael Jackson, even though Michael Jackson is remembered today, but let time keep going, Michael Jackson is going to be somebody that is not remembered, right? But again, you're like, okay, how is this going to work, right? And we say, okay, where you getting at? But let's get into the scriptures real quick, all right? So again, this is coming from Luke chapter 9, all right? I'm going to start at verse 46, all right? And it reads, an argument started among them as to which of them might be the greatest, right? Might be the greatest. But Jesus, knowing what they were thinking in their heart, took a child and had him stand beside him. And he told them, whoever welcomes this child in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me also welcomes him who sent me. Right? For the one who is the least among all of you, all right, he is the one who is truly great, right? So automatically you see Jesus, right? Automatically you see Jesus start talking about, hey, for one, humbling yourself, right? Because in the parentheses, when he says the least of these, the most humble, all right, it's pretty much saying, hey, you need to put yourself at a lower level of expectation and what you think of yourself. And not to say that, hey, you don't think of yourself highly and be very confident, but the difference is it's not about you anyway, brother, right? It's not about you, sis, right? He says the ones that decide to walk in humbleness are the most great, right? And let's go to another passage real quick, right? Let's go to another passage to back up what I just said, right? John chapter 13, all right? John chapter 13, and I didn't even switch it, but it's all good. All right, guys, I didn't even switch it, but it is what it is, right? But hey, let's get it going. I'm gonna bring this up for you. All right, John chapter 13, and I'm gonna start at verse 13. All right, but again, all right, this is when Jesus is about to wash their feet, right? And Peter refuses that Jesus washes his feet. And he says, look, I need to wash you unless you're not going to be with me. All right. But let's read this real quick. Okay, let's read this real quick. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who has sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. All right. So what is this, right? He pretty much reminds them, hey, you call me again, what? Teacher. You call me even Lord, right? And you see me washing your feet, a mere mortal, a human being, my creation's feet. And I humble myself before you, right? So you need to do what I do. The servant is no greater than his master, right? So if I'm willing to humble myself before you to wash your feet, how much more should you humble yourself to wash one another's feet? But the lesson also is this. This is putting the mission before oneself, because Jesus understood what God is going to require of his people, right? Bing bong. God knows, right? God knew what he's going to require Peter. He knew what he was going to require all his disciples to do. And he cannot afford to have his apostles to be very boisterous in mind, right? To have this mind frame of, oh, look at me, I'm a true 12th disciple, right? No, I need you to be all mission, none of you, right? Because when the individual in a mission puts himself before the mission begins to corrode, right? But when you have teammates and you have players and I'll use this for an example. The Patriots, right? The Patriots, in a way, what made the Patriots so great? Yes, they had good players, but Tom Brady wasn't the best quarterback. There was clearly better quarterbacks than Tom Brady. There were clearly better linebackers than what they had. Even though at one point they had a great defense. But anyway, the whole point is this. But you had a collective group of men, right, who chose to put themselves on the back burner, took pay cuts, was willing to be second a string, as long as it meant what? A Super Bowl in the end. Right? As long as it meant a Super Bowl in the end, right? So they were willing to put self aside. Okay, pride, ego. I have been to the Super Bowl twice. I'm a Pro Bowler, right? They put that to the side, bro. And that's why they were the dynasty that they were. Right? And this is the same concept. Okay, this is a blueprint that was taken from scripture, right? This blueprint always works. When you humble yourself, right, and you put God and God's mission before oneself, right, we can go so far. God can use us in many different arenas, right? But when we put ourselves on pedestals and we get clouded in our judgment, when people start following you on Facebook, people start praising you for your giftings, right? And you start thinking it's you rather than it was God who's giving you the gift. That's when we start corroding and start messing up the very thing that God has placed in our hands. We begin to mismanage things because of our egos. You even seen it in scripture with David. David just looked among his thing and got big headed saying, yeah, I am king. And he went and told one of his councilmen or whatever to count the people of Israel, right? And that in itself was sinful against God. And you said, why? It's because that wasn't for David to do. He's not God, right? And God said, you were wrong. Right? Because of our egos and because of our flesh and because we think so much highly of ourselves, a lot of the times the mission can be forfeited, right? And this is what Jesus was saying. He's prepping his disciples. Look, if you want to be great, humble yourself, right? If you truly want to be great and you really want to be used, humble yourself. The most humble is the most greatest, right? And then you see it through washing his feet, right? If I, your Lord, washed your feet, you should do the same to others, because he understood. Why do you think for centuries and thousands and over 2,000 years, the Bible is the most bought book? Is because people through the text chose what? Mission, God's mission over ourselves. I pray that it encourages you. I pray that you find encouragement in this. And I pray that you will put God's mission over yourself. All right. And again, my name is St.Cabot. Until another time, man. Again, grace and peace.